This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of Doc and Jock, our first of 2023. It's going to be a big one. Unfortunately, got to start the podcast talking about unfortunate NFL news. Later on in the podcast, we'll get to all things relevant to Detroit in regards to the Lions, recapping what the hell happened for the Michigan Wolverines. A major disappointment, maybe one of their most significant losses that we can talk about, a blown opportunity. But we got to talk about first something that happened in the NFL on Monday Night Football. Most of the time you get home after a long day, you sit, you want to watch a great game. And boy, the billing was two teams that were really at the top of the AFC with the Bills and the Bengals. But unfortunately, you look at a situation that it goes well beyond football with the injury to Damar Hamlin, a severe cardiac situation resulting in, CPR being conducted on the field. Players obviously very traumatized, a little bit of confusion and chaos resulting in Monday Night Football eventually and correctly being canceled. It was scary. I watched it live, but it was a little bit jarring because you just thought it was a regular injury at first because he goes down, but they don't show him going down and falling. They go right to commercial. So they just play it off like, well, it's another player going down. And then you come back, and unfortunately we all had to see Damar Hamlin stand up and eventually collapse as a result of his injuries. And, man, it was scary because welcoming in my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Cuz, did you see it live? And what was your reaction? Because it's not something that you see every day. It was real traumatic and real scary for a lot of people that watched. And unfortunately, my nephew was texting me. He watched it live too. So a lot of people now are looking at a situation maybe in the game of football from a completely now fresh perspective, really highlighting the violence of a tough sport.
Unfortunately, I did not see it live. I was actually watching wrestling for one of our other shows that we do. And I was goofing around on Twitter while I was watching wrestling, and that was where I was first made aware. And so the moment I found out, I ended up flipping over, and basically for the rest of the night I watched ESPN and watched the coverage of it. I ended up seeing the video reviews of the hit. To me, it was a football play. It was like just a regular old hit. It wasn't anything that looked like it should cause any injury, should be a big deal. It was just a run of the mill. It looked like T. Higgins put his shoulder down, and it looks like Hamlin kind of wrapped up and grabbed him, and he took it in the chest, and they both went down, ends up making the tackle, pops back up, and then next thing you know, he collapses to the field. And that was probably the most alarming. That was probably the most scary. And you and I started kind of going back and forth. We were texting about it, and later on in the morning on Tuesday morning, a lot more kind of came out, and it was noted that he had a cardiac issue. Basically, he had a heart attack. He got hit so hard in the chest that he had a heart attack, or got hit right, I should say, because it really wasn't that big of a hit. It wasn't that much of a hit. At least it appeared that way. But he got hit just right, and it essentially caused a heart attack, which is kind of what I was thinking as everything was kind of unfolding, as we were getting more and more information, because that's happened before. It's happened in hockey where a guy's taken a puck to the chest and he's had a heart attack on the ice, or they've had to get him to the back because he was having a heart attack. But it sounds like the everything that was done to help save him has been done, and it sounds like he's going to make a recovery. Don't know if he'll be able to play football again, but I think the big thing here is he's safe. He's going to be okay. Not sure about his career or football, but that is completely secondary. I think something else that is awesome that came out of this is there's like over $3.5 million raised for this guy and for any medical expenses and for anything that has to be done with him. in less than 12 hours, less than 16 hours. That is unreal. The amount of money that has been raised in his name on a GoFundMe page. That is absolutely awesome. And this is the one thing I will say, and I've said this since I went to Nashville a couple years ago, and while I was in Nashville, Buffalo Bills fans were there. Buffalo Bills fans are the best fans in the NFL. They're absolutely hands down the best people. Like, to a person, they are fantastic. Bills Mafia is great. And Cincinnati joining in and helping raise all that money for him, it's absolutely incredible. I think the NFL did what was appropriate, and if the NFL didn't do what was appropriate, the teams did what was appropriate by not going back out on the field and playing. A situation like that is absolutely insane. You've seen how distraught Josh Allen was. You've seen how upset other players were. It was absolutely a nightmare, and it was terrifying to witness that. I mean, you've got a guy basically having a heart attack on the field, and you've got guys out there doing CPR. If you've ever watched CPR done in front of you, it's absolutely mind-blowing. They have to basically break all of your ribs to get to your heart to get it pumping again. So it's absolutely nuts. When you watch somebody basically go elbow deep into your chest or into somebody else's chest, it's absolutely crazy. But very scary incident, but it sounds like things will be okay. I've never seen anything like that in my life. It was absolutely bananas to me.
Yeah, I'm curious, where are you seeing that potentially he's going to be okay? As far as I know, still in critical condition. I know that they got his heart started. I think the question that we still got to know is, when they do the EEG testing, when they do the brain functioning, how much of his lack of his heartbeat for the time that he did go out, did it potentially cause any brain damage? Now, there's a lot of good studies that say that if you get shocked and you get the defibrillation, the CPR within, 1 or 2 minutes, then you can pretty much have a recovery. If you recall, because there was a soccer player that had a similar situation where they just collapsed. Uri Fisher with the Red Wings, a similar scenario where there was a cardiac situation. It's all going to depend on how much of a brain deficiency did he suffer in terms of oxygen. So I haven't seen that he's going to be okay as of yet, but I know he's alive and in critical condition. But I am curious because it was so scary that I think the reaction medically has been praised by the fact that they got right to him. And I think that's what scared all the players, was the immediate medical attention. It got to them cognitively that, oh my gosh, when you realize that CPR is being done, you know that there's a heart issue, and the players were very much devastated. I'm so happy. You're absolutely right. Cooler heads prevailed. Whatever, debate you want to have about how much time it took, you needed to kind of have some time to process everything and to figure out what to do next. But it's just harrowing because you keep seeing the replays of you typically, because you've been around football players, they are these behemoth giants. You don't really see their vulnerability. There was pure terror on their faces, because I think the thought was maybe that they felt like potentially that something critical has happened, and all those thoughts in the moment go crazy. But it was so wild to see. And, obviously everybody here in Detroit, across the league, is wishing Damar Hamlin hopefully the opportunity, even off the field, just an opportunity to get back so that he can participate with things in his family and to have a meaningful life. 24 years old, to be taken off the field in an ambulance, especially this year too. You look at his career and that defense, he had played the third most defensive snaps on the team, and everybody was talking about what a great individual he was. The video that circulated with him just before the game, getting it up there with his mom and how close he was. It was like just crazy to see the reaction, even from the Bengals and the class that they showed. But do you think, and it's tough too, because the sentiment that I got online, which was very much realistic and something to talk about, is that football is now on the back burner of a lot of people's minds. They just want to see the update that says Damar Hamlin has gained consciousness and is talking and is able to at least have a full opportunity at a long life. But do you think, because of maybe the implications that have been delayed We're not going to exactly know the seeding. Do you think football, because there's a 1 week window between the end of the championship games in the NFC and the AFC, do you think you just cancel that week off and you just delay everything 1 week and push it all back, and then you just run the playoffs consecutively with no delays? You have a 1 week window where you could pause the sports community for a week and just reflect on what's going on. Because how the hell, if you're a Bills player and you're a Bengals player, how do you put that behind you? And, you hear football players, you kind of got to put that fear to the wayside in order for you to play violently and aggressively. It's a double-edged sword. It's a real inner struggle, but I'm kind of the opinion, if you have that week wiggle room, I'd be okay if they pause football for a week.
I'll be honest with you. While we're recording this right now, the NFL has made a decision on when they're going to get this game replayed or completed.
Oh.
But I'm of the belief that I don't understand why it's not completed either Wednesday or Thursday. Have it completed. I mean, look, we've done this before with COVID where we've had games late in the week. Yeah, it screws up your following week, but you got to get it in. You got to get it done. So I'm not sure why there isn't either like a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night or a Thursday night football game for them to get this done. Again, we've had this done before. If you need to reschedule anything, we don't have Monday night football games after basically when week 18 closes on Saturday or on Sunday, you're basically done with the regular season. You can move the Bills and you can move Cincinnati. You can move their games to a Monday night and let them finish their season on a Monday night to buy them a little bit of extra time because of all of this. And you just have those games go off, basically one at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and you have the other one go off at 8 o'clock, and you just call it a day. I'm not sure why the game isn't being completed this week. And again, while we're recording this, the NFL hasn't made an announcement yet. So when this comes out, this game could have already been completed. There could be an announcement on how they're going to handle it. But my estimation, just get it done this week. Get it done either Tuesday night, Wednesday, Thursday, and then you can bump the week 18 schedule out a day onto that Tuesday or onto that Monday if you need to. And that way everything just kind of flows the way it's supposed to go as you're getting into the playoffs. Because this is a very difficult thing, right? There's not a lot of time left in the season. You're working on a condensed schedule and you've got the playoffs right around the corner. These games are important because they are going to dictate seeding for these teams, especially with the Bills and with Cincinnati. Like, this game is important because it has seeding implications on it. Like, if the Bills win, they can take over they can take over the number 1 seed. If Cincinnati wins, they can take over the number 2 seed. So there's a whole lot going on here with getting this game in and getting this game completed. So I'm of the belief that it should be done this week, no later than Thursday. So by the time this comes out, the game should already have been completed.
Yeah, it's very scary because you realize every time that these guys take the field, it's a violent sport. They get hit. Severe injuries can have the potential of happening, and many NFL players are going to just have to reflect on this and put that beside them because you realize that it's just a scary game, and these guys are warriors to go out there week in and week out to try and entertain fans and give themselves a life. But you recognize it's not too many times you take a pause to appreciate it, but what they're doing is taking years off their life and harming their brains and bodies and quality of life later on in their future for the present entertainment of people and a thriving business for a lot of people, for the media, for entertainment, for podcasts. It's crazy to think about, but I'm down for if they just take a break for a week, figure it out. I know a lot of people are of that mindset where you say, get it done. But you look at it, how if you're those players and you keep replaying that footage of them looking terrorized, how do you get back on the field and lace it up now and then a week from now to fire it up? It's tough. It's going to take an enormous amount of support and talking things through. And really, even the Bills just asking him the legitimate question, do you even want to play this game? Do you find a way to just say, okay, let's base it on win percentage and just call it a seed? Because what's the difference between a 1 and 2 seed in the grand scheme of things? I know it can mean home field advantage, But
there's a ton.
There's a ton.
That's an ignorant statement. There's a ton. There's an absolute ton.
But in
Not only do you get a bye week, not only do you get the bye week, which you need at this point in the season, it also dictates home field advantage going forward. It'll dictate whether or not you've got to travel if it ends up to be a 1 versus a 2 seed. There's a ton that is at stake here. There's an absolute ton. Also, it dictates your road that you have to go to get through the playoffs. If you're a 3 seed compared to a 2 seed, generally the 2 seed is going to have it much easier. On top of that, if you're a 2 seed or a 3 seed, and you can become a 1 seed, you want the 1 seed all day long. With the way that they have redone the playoffs, you absolutely want the 1 seed. It gives you time off, and it allows you to basically restructure everything.
Oh, yeah, but I've seen NFL teams before as well. No, it's right. There's meaning behind it. You definitely, in the grand scheme of things, with all things being considered and normal, you want the number 1 seed. But what I'm saying is that I've seen teams with, 6, 7 seed win out in the postseason, have extraordinary efforts. It happens. And sometimes the number 1 seeds always sometimes, have that question mark of that week off, that just that little bit of struggle by having that time off. And sometimes you maybe even want to play that first weekend to stay sharp. So, but in the grand scheme of things, I wonder how it's going to be. I do think the NFL responded positively, which is good. It indicates, and, when you have players like Ryan Clark go on TV and express more and advocate more for the humanization of these players and things like that, it can galvanize a lot of people. So it'll be interesting to see. It was definitely harrowing to see what happened, and you hope that, Damar Hamlin can make that recovery, and you hope that, outside of football, that he can have a quality of life should he recover. And that's all we're hoping for. Thoughts and prayers, and everybody's wanting. The whole world wants Damar Hamlin to return. It's happened, so there are opportunities that we've seen before with others that have suffered cardiac situations to be able to come back and still lead productive and long lives. No real easy way to turn our attention to something else, but we will here.
Sure there is. Sure there's. Here, I'll give you your segue. Something absolutely horrible happened on Monday Night Football. There was something that absolutely was horrible, and a jail sexing that took place on Saturday night with Michigan football. Now go ahead. I'll let you take it away, because it was absolutely disgusting what took place on Saturday.
Yeah, it was tough, man. I was really shocked, because you look at football games and you realize that, and obviously I take stock into the psychological aspects of the game, but on paper, cause Michigan across the board was better in so many ways.
Absolutely.
Than TCU. So you look at it, you break down the game, you say, okay, yeah, TCU can move the football. They have explosiveness. Their quarterback is on par with J.J. McCarthy. But you realize that something that just took over is the heart and desire that TCU had. The disrespect card came into play, and they wanted to show that they could be physical. And what was crazy to me, cause Michigan had the talent, blown opportunity. I felt like it was a coaching situation.
Yep.
Why? Yeah, I mean, and I know analytics is going to be always debated, and people will say, well, analytics say you should go for it and shit like that. And you look at play calls, and everyone's like, look, I'm a bottom line person. If you tell me you get down to the 1 yard line and you go for it, and analytics says you do and you don't end up getting it, you messed up. You didn't get the points. I'm of the opinion you get down there and it's early in the game, take the points. I don't care about analytics. I don't care about the long-term play of deciding to go for it at 4th and 1 and da-da-da-da. I don't care. Give me 3 points. I move on. I feel successful. Instead, what does Michigan do? They try a razzle-dazzle play, thinking they can just show up there and execute a trick play against TCU, who obviously had it well covered and understood what to do. So to me, what's more frustrating and what should piss off Michigan fans is you blew an opportunity with good coaching to advance and have an opportunity to play for the national title. That's the biggest thing, because, okay, some things don't go your way in regards to the officials. Some things don't happen. But then the next play, you fumble the ball, you turn it over, you don't play with the same, and I'll echo what everyone else has said. Why did Michigan so easily want to play TCU's game? All year, Michigan has imposed their will. And all of a sudden, because defensively you forgot how to tackle and be fundamentally sound, you're now playing a game that's a shootout. That was a crazy, crazy thing that came out of this game, is that Michigan ended up playing TCU's game. Very disappointing, very disheartening. How much of a blown opportunity was this? Is Michigan going to regret what happened in a situation in which you had an opportunity to really meet a lot of big goals this year?
I think for a very long time, this loss is going to stick with Michigan. Look, you had a perfect setup for you to get to the national championship game. And look, Georgia looks very beatable. Ohio State took them to the woodshed, and they came out better for it. But, I mean, Georgia looks gettable. And Michigan let this game slip through their hands. I don't want to hear about how it was the refs. I don't want to hear about any excuses. This game falls down to coaching. I felt like there was a lot of blunders with game plans and play calls. It was head scratching at times. And then I think it comes down to execution. Defensively, they couldn't stop a whore in a whorehouse. Like there was nothing they could do. They were like a strainer with hot water running through it. Anytime you turned around, TCU was gashing them for plays. Defensively, it's like 3rd and 3. You basically have kept them in check. And then you're going to send an all-out blitz, and all they've got to do is just dink and dunk over top of you, and your secondary can't cover anybody all of a sudden. It was absolutely mind-blowing and frustrating to watch that game unfold. And then offensively, you've got your savior. You've got J.J. McCarthy, right? You've got your guy, the dude who's supposed to help take you to the promised land. Dude has trouble with an exchange on a handoff. Guys throwing interceptions and pick sixes. Like multiple, not one, but at least 2 pick sixes in this game. Like, what are we talking about here? This guy was supposed to be the revelation that your offense needed. There was zero revelation here. I really feel like Cade McNamara could have took you further in this game. Incredibly frustrating all the way around. The pass game looked suspect. The run game was suspect. You have a guy on your team who's incredibly explosive in Donovan Edwards, and you can't get him on the field enough and get the ball in his hand at crunch time. Like, you're on your goal line. What are you doing not giving him the ball? And I'll say this, I'm not sure if his hand was really banged up or what the situation with his hand was. I would assume after a month, the cast could have came off and his hand could have been in a better spot. Again, not 100% sure, not a doctor. But he did have trouble holding onto the ball for certain plays. There were times where he would fumble the ball out of bounds. Thankfully, it was out of bounds. This game was so incredibly aggravating to watch if you were a Michigan fan. And look, Sonny Dykes came out and said it. TCU's head coach came out and said it. He was like, look, all of our guys were sick and tired of basically hearing for a month how Michigan's going to wipe the floor with us and how everybody just penciled them in above us. We came out and we showed you what we can do. And that's absolutely what they did. Absolutely what they did. And if you're a Michigan fan, I don't necessarily know where you go from here. I don't know if it gets any better than what you've done these last 2 years. I don't think you ever win a national championship with the way everything is currently set up. Unless you get a head coach in there who can somehow figure something out with NIL so you can get better players here. Unless you can get a head coach who can actually win a bowl game. Unless you can get players who understand the importance of everything that goes on to get you to this point, and then when you get in these games, you can't just take them lightly. I really feel like Michigan took TCU lightly. Even Jim Harbaugh leading up to this game had made comments that to me struck me as odd, almost as though he was expecting his team to win. And that's fine to have that expectation that you are going to go out there and win, but you don't ever let your team know that. You beat your team down. You make your team think that the team that you're going up against is bigger, badder than OSU, bigger, badder than Georgia, bigger, badder than Alabama. You don't ever let your team get soft. You don't ever let your team get light and rest on its laurels. And that's exactly what happened. This game, to me, comes down 100% to what the coaches did in their preparation for this game, and then with their game planning and then their play calling. I felt like it absolutely cost this team, and it cost this team at the exact wrong spot. Very frustrating to watch.
Real quick update from the NFL in regards to our first topic. After speaking with both teams and NFLPA leadership, NFL Commissioner Goodell informed the clubs today that the Bills-Bengals game will not be resumed this week. NFL has made no decision regarding the possible resumption of the game at a later date. and that's of Tuesday at 1:30 as we're having this conversation. And because when I was watching that game, obviously I was elated. I was loving it because it was so entertaining. But the thought that just kept crossing my mind was, see, J.J. McCarthy, finally, when you had the opportunity to put the ball in his hands a lot, you saw that potentially that he was turnover prone in the biggest game, and those pick sixes I thought were key and vital in regards to what happened there. You can't spot any opponent 14 points.
Yep.
You can't do that. It's just killer. And
when you needed him to show up the biggest, he wasn't there for you. Totally let you down.
And maybe that was the part where maybe because we're so close to it, our blinders were there that a lot of times the quarterback that plays better and is better is probably going to lead the team to victory. I always believe that. And Duggan probably, I thought that maybe you would give the edge to TCU, but slightly like 55-45 in there, and you figure that JJ's speed and elusivity would do some things. But the thing that really frustrated me as well was J.J. McCarthy, and then all of a sudden Michigan's defense got way too blitz happy, and you're playing Russian roulette when you blitz and don't get there, because it resulted in obviously a big gain that when you were down 3 extended TCU's lead. I thought that blitzing at that high of a rate and not getting there that successfully, I thought was probably a bad strategy. And so to me, cuz I know a lot of people will look at the Wilson play and things like that, but even if they take away the touchdown, you're on the inch-yard line. Why not run a QB sneak? Why are you giving it to some backup that nobody's ever heard of? You don't even give it to Donovan Edwards?
Or here's the thing, you have tight ends who are pretty decent.
Yeah,
why not pass the ball out to the flat? Or you have a really electric player in Donovan Edwards. Why not get the ball in his hands?
Right.
I mean, there's 1,000 other ways you could go, and you pick to go with the backup running back who have seen limited time and limited carries? Like, what? What are we doing?
I was shocked. And I think, I know the layoff maybe played a part in it, and I don't know what kind of excuse level you'll give to that, but I'm surprised.
None. I give none to it.
Because I'm surprised that Jim Harbaugh is 1-6 in these bowl games. I mean, that's a time when you have time to prepare. Maybe the duties of other responsibilities are taking away from the expectation of what you got to do in these big moments. But there's something to be said that when you have time and you have all this added, responsibility, you're not coming through. And I think Michigan's got to take a slice of humble pie, regroup, and we'll talk about the bigger picture here in a few moments. But I can't stand those that will. Now, obviously, on our Twitter page, you know that the guy running it at Detroit Podcast is from Michigan State. So when I tweet out, the officials just hate Michigan, you know that's coming from a place of laughter and ridiculousness, hyping up your guys'. But because I'll be honest, as much as I joke about Michigan officials in Michigan games hating the Wolverines, there are a lot of people that really believe that Michigan got screwed by the officials, 1, on the Wilson play, and 2, on the non-targeting call late in the game, which was a catastrophe of a play in and of itself. But guys, come on. There were plenty of reasons. Yes, the targeting call was bad and it was egregious, but you still would have probably been flagged for an illegal forward pass. So at the very best, you would have ended up with offsetting penalties, or you would have had a situation in which you still would have had 20 seconds to go 65 yards plus. So the odds of that situation were not going to be in your favor.
Here's the other thing, too. Let's talk about what Jim Harbaugh did at the very end of the game. He basically allowed 2 minutes to run off the clock before he started using timeouts. I mean, it was completely questionable. Even his father in the stands, he was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
They zoomed in on Jack, and Jack was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Dude, this game, the coaching staff let down these players, and these players let down the fan base. Legit. Let's just call it for what it is. You had too many plays that you just did not execute, but the coaching staff put these players in bad spots and put bad plays in there for them to execute on. It was calamity at the highest levels. If you want to see where Michigan football ranks as a power, take no more than this game. When it's the biggest, most important games, they will find some way to dick it up so bad. And look, to me, it all goes right to the head. It goes right to Jim Harbaugh. It is basically summarized by the final 3 minutes and 30 seconds of this football game, where he allows almost 2 minutes to tick off the clock before he starts taking timeouts, which your team then gets the ball back in its hands, and you have to go forever and a day down the field, and you've got like 33 seconds. What are we doing?
Especially on the heels of watching Saleh mess up with the Jets, Dan Campbell earlier this year, clock management strikes again, and it definitely struck Michigan, and it was just disappointing. TCU advances. I think they don't got much of a chance because the other game was also as spectacular. Ohio State was one field goal attempt away from upsetting Georgia, but man, that game back and forth too. Two games that were really high caliber. When you look at Michigan and you look at how it all shook out and you realize, wow, J.J. McCarthy, decent first year, can only build from here. I just thought that you had it set up for yourselves to go 15-0. You had an opportunity to really set forth a pathway. I don't know why in the biggest moments that Michigan sometimes just can't get over the hump. And some people will say, well, that the next step in the evolution of Harbaugh is playing bully ball in the Big Ten, which is successful. Obviously, clearly, that playing old school smash mouth football has the opportunity of winning in the Big Ten. But then finding that extra gear that you need in a playoff situation. And that's tough because teams like Georgia have also struggled in those moments. But what did they do? They kind of turned up the gear a little bit, found that quarterback, found their receivers, found that extra speed that they needed, and added some premier defensive linemen to kind of get over that hump. And that's the kind of the next step for Michigan, in my opinion, is to get over that hump. You got to find a way to incorporate some of that SEC flash and dash, a little bit of that, a little bit of bravado, a little bit of that opening up the offense earlier in the year so that when you get into a shootout, you don't seem like a fish out of water. You can handle it and you can make those key plays. But in the moments when you needed them to make the plays, they weren't there. So I got to ask you, what's the next step for Michigan? Do you see this? Because I kind of don't see them doing it. I kind of feel like this is the ceiling. Getting to the playoff, winning maybe, getting to the finals. They just are a little bit of a stretch away from being a team that can win it all. This is good. It's a good season. But I think you're starting to see a little bit of rumblings of anger of people going like, well, we've seen you in the playoff. When are you going to take the next step? So that's going to take some severe introspective look at making some modifications to your program, which I don't think Michigan's going to do.
I don't know if it gets any better than this, honestly. I don't know if this team has what it takes to actually get to the national championship, play in it, and then win it. I think you will always be basically the bridesmaid. You'll never be the bride. You'll essentially get this far. Even when they go to expand this playoff, I think they have a shot at winning a couple of games and getting to a semifinal. But I don't know if they ever get past that point. I mean, like let's just look at this year, right? If you were looking at top teams in all of college football, Alabama would have to be in there. You would have to add Penn State would somehow probably make it in there, and I don't even think Penn State's a very good team. Utah would be in there. I think Utah's a pretty good team. You would have USC, even though they were a little bit embarrassed. I think LSU might be in there. You have all these other teams, all these other power teams from either the SEC or the Pac-12 or even, I guess, the Big 12. But you have other teams out there that you're going to have to make your way through. And I don't know if with this coaching staff the way it is intact and with the way that the athletes that they go out and get, and look, I'm not trying to demean any of the players on that team. But what I'm telling you is when you play the NIL game and you look at what Alabama does and you look at what Georgia does and you look at what even Ohio State does, and look, Ohio State can't compete with the likes of Alabama and Georgia, but you look at what these other schools are doing and you look at how they're bringing other guys in and you look at what they're putting out on the field every single year. Like, you realize Georgia just lost half of its football team to the NFL last year, and all they did was they reloaded, and now they're playing in the national championship game again. I don't know if Michigan or Michigan State even has the ability to do those things, or if they even want to tread into those waters to do those things. And because of that, it's going to continue to limit you. It's going to continue to hamstring you when you're trying to make the push for the best athletes, when you're trying to make the push for the best players, when you're trying to make that push to get guys into your program to then help get you to that level. And here's the thing that I don't think we talk about enough. If you get these guys in, you essentially have them for 2 years. It's not like these guys are here and they're playing for 3 and 4 years. You basically get these best athletes in, and you've got a 2-year window to make it crack with those guys. Otherwise, you're just bringing in another wave. And we've seen with NIL, and we've seen with the transfer portal, basically if these guys don't get their playing time, if these guys don't get what they're looking for, they've got other opportunities out there. You've got coaches who are actively recruiting guys who are on school rosters right now. I mean, you look at what Michigan has done. Michigan has basically used their NIL money or their NIL whatever resources for getting guys out of the transfer portal and basically giving them money, or keeping their guys in school to basically help them out for another year and saying, here, instead of you going to the NFL, we'll give you more money now, and that way you can play for us for this year and then go to the NFL. It's a bit of a different mindset, but like, you're not playing the same way that Georgia and Alabama and, again, Ohio State, which are the big dogs, you're not playing the same way they're playing, so you're hurting yourself. I don't know if Michigan ever wins a national championship with the way things are currently constructed and with the way things will be constructed with the expanded playoff. I think this team will get to the playoff regularly if they just kind of keep doing what they're doing. I think this team has the ability to play in semifinal games, but I don't know if this team ever has the ability to win that semifinal game, and that is upsetting. And again, a lot goes to Jim Harbaugh, and there's a ton of talk surrounding Jim Harbaugh going to the NFL possibly, and that in and of itself is frustrating. You don't hear about Kirby Smart having to fend off the NFL. You don't hear about numbnuts from Ohio State fending off calls from the NFL, but you always hear about Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day. But you have this coach who is constantly putting one foot in the water, keeping one foot on land. At some point, Jim Harbaugh just has to make a decision. If you want to go to the NFL, go to the NFL. Go do it. Because when he does these things, it really hurts recruiting. And again, you are not competing with the same guys when it comes to the NIL money. So you're basically crushing your recruiting class. This is a team that has won the Big Ten back-to-back years and has played in the college football playoff in back-to-back years. And yet, they don't even have a top 15 recruiting class. And a lot of that has to do with NIL, but some of that has to do with Jim Harbaugh constantly flirting with the NFL. So if you're going to go, just go, man. Like, just go. It's okay. You can't win the big game. It's been proven. You can't win the big game in the NFL. You can't win the big game in college. It's okay. Just go. This is what you do. We talk about Jim Caldwell, and we talk about the head coach of the Pistons being the guy to basically get you there, but not the guy to get you over the water. That's what Jim Harbaugh is. Jim Harbaugh is great at walking into a situation that is complete shit and getting it righted, but he's not the guy to get you across and get you to the promised land. He hasn't. You go back, you look at what he's done in college. You look at what he did with Stanford. You look at what he did with San Diego State. You look at what he's done at San Francisco when he was with the 49ers. You look at what he's done every place he's gone. He gets you to the point where you should be winning or on the precipice of winning, but he can't ever get the deal done. So this is what you'll be. And if Jim Harbaugh stays, this is what it'll be. If Jim Harbaugh wants to go to the NFL, I say go. Just go. Like, it's fine. Figure it out some other way. Because the way it's working right now, you're just setting yourself up to be disappointed every single year. Like, my New Year's Eve completely sucked after that game. And I really wanted to watch that Georgia-Ohio State game. But after watching what took place with the Michigan game, the moment that clock struck 0-0, I shut it off. I put something else on. I didn't watch. I could not bear to watch the trophy presentation, and I could not bear to watch the Ohio State-Georgia game. I ended up going to Netflix. I ended up staying home that night. I went to Netflix, and I think I watched a comedy special. That's what I watched. That's what I did with my life. And then I waited till 11:45, and I put on one of the countdown shows. But that's it. Yeah. This is what you'll be. This is your life if you're going to stay this way.
See, here's the tough part, because it goes into the question of, can you be happy with 13-1 every year, or getting to the playoff and getting close, but not ever getting over the hump? I think there's opportunities that with the right luck in situations that take place, Michigan can win one. They can get there. They can do it once. But here's the tough part, okay? And I know Michigan fans don't want to hear it, but Jim Harbaugh is an NFL guy. He played in the NFL. He started in the NFL. Now he took advantage of an opportunity to coach the team that he loves at Michigan. But you still got to have that itch. I mean, if you're anywhere near a competitor and you got to the game, and not only did you lose that game, you lose it to your brother. I mean, that's got to eat at you no matter what level of success you ever achieve in college football. So, and here's the thing too. You read reports that now Jim Harbaugh is listening to the advice of his representatives, who are telling him, look, don't kind of shut the door on the NFL, because the more that those rumors come out, it does in a way. I know it hurts recruiting for those that negatively recruit, but it also helps in a way where if you're sitting with these kids and you say, look, I'm a coach that's in demand, I'm popular, I understand how to get you to the NFL, my name's always up into the NFL, but I'm going to be loyal here. It doesn't hurt Jim Harbaugh as much as I think
it also helps him leverage a contract.
Yes, it also helps him every year to have this out, because it's easy to stop. Like you said, Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, Mel Tucker, you're not hearing it. Nick Saban, that talk has stopped. You're not hearing it as much. You hear it with the young hotshot offensive assistant, but I think it's good for it's not great for Michigan, but it's also not as bad. It's also great for Jim Harbaugh and his efforts to keep making $1 million or $2 million more every single year. So I look at it and I say, you know what? As long as he keeps coming out periodically and making his point and being honest, he's been honest. He said, I'm going to coach Michigan. But because you and I have never been in the position where someone says, Jim, come to Indianapolis. Here's a private jet. Sit down. We're going to offer you 7 years, $100 million. Do whatever you want. You're going to get 4 years no matter what. Nobody's gotten the Dan Campbell treatment publicly like the very few coaches do. So if you get that, it's hard to turn it down, because you got to also remember too, Jim Harbaugh is no spring chicken. He doesn't want to take a call from Joe Schmo saying, hey, we paid so-and-so $50,000. He's not playing. And Jim Harbaugh's probably like, I don't give a fuck. He's not good enough. But with these NIL dollars, transfer portal, the non-stop life you have to live in recruiting, the NFL life is a lot slower paced as compared to the life of a college coach. So that can wear on you. That can wear on you tremendously, where probably in the last 30 days he's had to make some trips and have some conversations and have to hobnob and smooth some people that aren't happy. That's a lot of butt kissing. That's a lot of trying to solve problems. So I could see Jim Harbaugh finishing his career in the NFL. But as of now, the coach of Michigan is trying to regroup and figure out how to get to the next level. Similarly, the Detroit Lions are trying to get to the next level, but unfortunately some things have happened. Kind of put a damper in my spirits in regards to what's going to happen, because for me, the odds of the Rams, which is what the Lions need to have a chance to get to the playoffs this year, the Rams have to go to Seattle in probably the most rabid environment across the entire National Football League and win a game. I don't see it happening. So it kind of makes, to me, the whole playoff situation nothing more than a moot point. So I think that you look at it and you say, hey, it was great. I love the performance that they had against the Bears, because not only did they crush them, they dominated a Bears team that just wasn't that good. And that's what you're supposed to do when you're head and tails better than another team. So that was good. But I just think that when I see how the season's likely going to end, I predicted 8-9, so they met my expectation. It just kind of, to me, entering this week of football talk, it's kind of a downer, because you had a chance within grasp, if you played well against the Panthers, to give yourself more of a chance than having to rely on someone else.
Yeah, and look, this is kind of where I'm at with it. And this is how I put it in our rundown. I'm basically pulling back my playoff expectations after basically guaranteeing it, whether it was week 14 or week 15. And it's just because as week 17 kind of played out, you start looking at everything. And it was cool to see Detroit in the graphic for a minute, but Green Bay basically holds all the cards in their hands, right? And Seattle has a pretty cake matchup against the Rams. Rams are not a good team. We all believe this. The 12th man up in Seattle is very difficult, especially when you've got to go on the road and you've got to play there. It makes it very hard, especially if you're not a good team like the Rams are. So unless the Rams do something special, and that's a 4:00 game, I'm not anticipating the Lions having a shot to get in the playoffs. Now, what the Lions can do is they can basically stick it to Aaron Rodgers, which would be absolutely great. It'd be absolutely great to stick to Aaron Rodgers and get into the playoffs. I would absolutely love that. But at this moment in time, it really feels like the Rams are going to lose that game to Seattle. Seattle will clinch their playoff spot, hinging on what happens in the Detroit-Green Bay game. I think Detroit can beat Green Bay, and I think Dan Campbell would love to play spoiler. I think this game, though, between Green Bay and Detroit is incredibly important because 8-8 right now is fine, but putting a winning record on your resume and basically setting the tone and setting the expectation for next year is even better. Basically saying, look, 9-8 is cool, but you've seen what 9-8 got us. Didn't get us to the playoffs. Didn't get us to where we needed to be. We have to be that much better. And setting the expectation that 9-8 is the bare minimum. The bare minimum. You need to be winning 10 games plus a year. I think for Dan Campbell, it helps sets the tone. It helps sets the tenor for next year for the Lions when they come back. So I think it's still a very important game. I don't necessarily know if it's going to have the luster because I think Seattle will take care of their business. So then essentially the Packers will be playing for their playoff hopes and the Lions will be playing spoiler. And hopefully the Lions get that win and hopefully go to 9-8 and set the tone for next season.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing that you look at where they were to where they are now. So
dude, you know how frustrating it is? Because it's going to come down to, it really comes down to one or two games this season that would have been the difference. Whether it would have been that Minnesota game that we felt like Dan Campbell gave Minnesota, I think it was in week 3, or whether it was the Seattle game where they couldn't stop anybody and I think they lost by a field goal. Or you can even go to the Philadelphia game that kicked off the season where they lost by a field goal. You go to any one of those games and we have a different story. Or even the Buffalo game where you could have won, but it felt like you gave that game away a couple of times. Any way you slice it, man, any one of those L's being a W, we're talking about something completely different. We're talking about going to Green Bay and playing for playoffs. And basically, if they would have beat Seattle, I think they would have the edge and they would be in the playoffs right now. It's absolutely banana boats to me that it's the line is always that fine for this team. It's never, nothing is ever easy for this team. It's always basically a hair for them to get into the playoffs, or it's a hair for them to be out of the playoffs. It's nothing ever simple for them. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, it is frustrating because there is room for talk about missed opportunities. That is open, but I think it's not for now. It's for a situation in which you look at it and you say, at least the Lions are in the national conversation for the next few days, and they'll be in the talk of potentially now being a team that's on the rise. And that's where it is. And I think, nobody's going to come out and say it blatantly because you always have that hope that maybe the Rams do something. But for Dan Campbell, it's like a pseudo playoff game. It's like, hey, Ratchet, and he did it intentionally on Monday. He said, this is a playoff game. I want there to be pressure. I want to put this on these guys, and I want these guys to win. Now, they could fall short. They could run into a buzzsaw in the Packers, but where else are you going to get this kind of experience where the Lions' young roster knows that the team across from them is going to be crisp, is going to be sharp, is going to likely be playing for something. So that in and of itself gives Dan Campbell the ultimate test to see, okay, does Aleem McNeil step up? Can Jared Goff make the play? Can DeAndre Swift put together a lot of things? Can James Houston and Aiden Hutchinson pass another big test? So while nobody's going to come out and say it publicly, it's a great test. It's a great learning tool that the Lions will have been afforded by going to Lambeau in a critical situation that you're trying to do and achieve big goals. I think it deserved, for me, the question in regards to do the Lions and Packers deserve to be flexed to Sunday Night Football? Yes. Aaron Rodgers is a national story. I think obviously everyone knows that the league is looking really past the Lions. They're looking at it like, oh, this is great. Seattle's probably going to win, and we can have Aaron Rodgers in a must-win game. That's the national storyline. The storylines in Detroit are different in that we obviously want to spoil the big goals and plans of Aaron Rodgers. They deserved it, but in terms of drama, being a huge soccer fan, they typically run games that are, important simultaneously. That's the ultimate drama. That's the ultimate flipping back and forth. If it's a close game, all of a sudden the Rams go up by 3 and the Lions are down by 3 and then the Lions go ahead. You perpetually have this intense drama at the highest level had you decided to run the games concurrently. And that's what I thought the spirit of the situation would be intended. But in the end, they chose a national story over the interest of the fans here in Detroit, which sucks. But I think that in the end,
honestly, I do feel like the NFL missed.
They boned us. They
missed an opportunity there by doing that.
Yeah,
by having the games go side by side. You could be breaking into a Lions game to show a highlight of the Seattle game or vice versa.
Yes.
They did miss an opportunity here.
And they boned Detroit at the expense of Aaron Rodgers. And that's fine. I get it. I get your scenario. I get your game and what you want to do. So that's why, for me, I hope that the Lions take some solace. And I hope, through some grace, that the Rams win. And it's winner take all. Because then the pressure goes to even higher levels. Then I think now you can go into some serious evaluation of Jared Goff. Because that'll be basically like a Lions Super Bowl. One game, and you're out. So that's a great case to see. How does Jared Goff handle it? How does he handle the pressure, the noise, all the shit going on? Because that's another further step in his evaluation in regards to, hey, do you want to keep him around for 6 years or just 2? So I love everything around the game other than the results. I don't think the Lions win. I think Aaron Rodgers knows that this is the time to butter it up, tighten up all the mistakes, get after it, and he'll have his team ready to attack the Lions' run defense. And in the end, the Lions' defense, like it has been in some moments, will be the Achilles heel. Aaron Rodgers is probably like, wait a minute, Mike Hughes is now getting more reps than Jeff Okudah? Fuck yeah, I'm going to tackle that. I'm going to find who Will Harris is covering. I'm going to pick on these young corners. He's probably like, finally, I can get some redemption. I think it's going to be a 7-point victory, 28-21. Good game, but I see the Lions finishing 8-9 this year with a loss in Lambeau.
I think it goes a little bit different. I think you are going to find out a ton about this team, and you're going to find a ton out about this coaching staff. This isn't the same Aaron Rodgers. Believe me, I know Aaron Rodgers has sabotaged my fantasy football team so much so that I'm playing in a third-place game, and I have no chance of winning that right now. Oh. Aaron Rodgers sucks right now. Aaron Rodgers is absolutely brutal. I think Aaron Rodgers has a little bit of mojo to maybe get it up for one more, but I think you're going to find out a ton about this team, ton about this coaching staff, because I think they're coming in to wreck shop, whether or not they are playing for a playoff spot or they're playing to be spoiler. Don't think that this Lions coaching staff and these Lions players didn't hear all that crap that Aaron Rodgers was talking.
Yeah.
Don't think that hasn't been said. Aaron Rodgers in recent years has looked mighty fragile when he plays the Lions. He has some of his worst games against the Lions in recent years. I think this continues that trend. Yeah, I know it's at Lambeau. Yeah, I know it's probably going to be cold. Yeah, I get it that the Packers will be playing for their playoff hopes that will be on the line. I get all of that. I get that this game means more to the Green Bay Packers, or has more, there's more of an emphasis in this game for the Green Bay Packers, where if they win, they're going to the playoffs. But I think the Lions will revel in playing spoiler. And by chance, if the Rams somehow eke out a win over Seattle, up in Seattle, I think that it puts more juice on the Lions, and I think, again, they will revel in destroying the Packers. I think it'll be a close game. And by destroy, I just mean their hopes and their dreams and shatter all of those things. I think the Lions end up winning this game again, very close. The last time they played was very close. I think the Lions end up winning this game. I think it will be something like 24-21. This will be one of those games where Aaron Rodgers is able to throw 3 touchdowns, which he's, I think, only done once this season. But nonetheless, the Lions escape with a very cold victory.
Oh, I like it. I like your optimism. I would love to see Aiden Hutchinson, James Houston finish off strong. The defense kind of putting it all together, it would be great. I just think there's too much on the line. I just think that with the playoffs dangling and knowing that potentially if Aaron Rodgers can win and he's in, I think that provides him the extra level. That performance that he just had against the Vikings, it made it look easy. If they can recreate that again,
dude, the Vikings are an absolute mess. Like the Vikings just go complete Vikings. Like if you're a Minnesota fan, you have to be on death watch.
Yeah, the team with the 11 wins that nobody believes in. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
it's crazy because there's holes, but because remember they're also in a new regime. So you gotta kind of also put that into perspective that they're gonna build something and they've already started off with 11 wins. My God, we'd love that here in Detroit. So it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better.
I think a lot of their issues is their quarterback, and he's paid ridiculous amounts of money. You've got a wide receiver who I think is absolutely fantastic in Jefferson, but he showed that he is mentally fragile in their last game that they had against Green Bay. Adam Thielen, I think, is a complete butthole. The guy is a giant crybaby, and if he doesn't get enough looks, he starts bashing his helmet, and it looks like he wants to spear and then trident Kirk Cousins. Defensively, their secondary is abysmal. Like, we talk about Detroit's defense being poor. That defense is way worse. So, you're right. They having 11 wins is great. Nobody believes in you. That sucks. But you've got to reconfigure that entire defense. I think with Detroit, you've got some building blocks. You've got some pieces that you can work with over here.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, great podcast to start the year. Always enjoy catching up with Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. It's been a tough time for things going around the league, but like in everything, there's a ton of resiliency. There's a ton of positives to take away when people rally together and help out. So hopefully all the prayers across the country can find their way to Cincinnati, and hopefully DeMar Hamlin can come through, and hopefully that everything can be worked out in a positive manner. Hopefully it's a positive ending for Detroit as they look to rebound from a tough start and look to have a winning year, which would be great for this regime. Anywhere you find podcasts, type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. We appreciate all those that subscribe. Rachel, overseas, love it. I love that you tune in every Thursday. Hopefully you hear the shout out from the States. We appreciate your support over these years. Hopefully the start of the new year is great for you, Rachel, and everything that you do. We appreciate your support. We really do love when you message and say that Thursday is your favorite day of the week, as it is mine as well. Thanks, everybody. Let's kick it off another great year. 2023 is going to be a great year for everybody involved, including the Detroit Sports Podcast.